50 minutes or 1 hour, we are going to give you an update on Cscs and the user program. So unlike previous years where I would talk a lot about strategy and where things are going in the future, today or this year we will really focus on the user program. So I will try to be short with my presentation, and I would really like to have questions and discussions, and I encourage you to interrupt me while I'm talking. So don't wait to the end, just when you feel there is something that is not clear or that you would like to comment. So also comment, not just ask questions. You interrupt me, and I hope the people who walk around with the mics are capable of doing this, that we can be very informal in this next hour. What I'm doing is I start with a couple of slides that I showed last year. The first one is this evolution of Cscs, and the main point here is since the HPC high performance computing and networking initiative started in 2009, we had a series of systems, and the main point is that today we're in the last phase of PASC17. So PASC17 is fully built and will be the platform through the end of this decade. And I showed this slide last year, which is trying to summarize the rationale of how the systems that we operate at Cscs are influenced by these programs, the HP2C platform that was succeeded by PASC, and PASC, as you all know, is going on at least financed through the end of the decade, and I would suspect that something like PASC will continue in the next decade as well. And the important thing here is that we always use the work we do in these platforms to influence the systems that we build at Cscs. Now, the main point about this slide was that in the past, Cscs used to have many different computers. So we had Monte Rosa, we had PASC17, PASC17, we had a number of clusters. Particularly, we had a number of clusters around data storage and data analytics platform. And, well, those many remember, Monte Rosa was a multi-core, a distributed multi-core system, and so was PASC17, a distributed Xeon-based multi-core system, and PASC17 was since 2013 hybrid multi-core host, so Xeon host, GPU accelerated system. And the big thing that happened last fall, and so actually here I have to say we were ahead of schedule. I just realized this now, is last fall we had this massive upgrade, which was a massive, not in terms of, we didn't change the number of cabinets or the overall number of nodes, but massive in terms of the work that was going on, that would basically merge together the data analytics platforms, the multi-core, distributed multi-core system, and the hybrid GPU accelerated system all into one platform. And I would really like to emphasize, this was, I think the system was down 6 weeks, and in 6 weeks, the engineers of Cray, Cscs, and NVIDIA made this happen somehow, this merger, and this was a major effort, and I would really like to highlight this engineering effort. I tell you, this is not trivial to get this to go, and in many projects I've seen, this keeps going and the systems don't work and so on. And so that they were so fast, it really means they really worked. The engineering side of this was done with all three institutions in a fantastic way. I also said last year, that the future is, and actually this is really what I wrote, the future will have even more different architectures, okay? So I think we are in the program we ran in Switzerland, fortunate that we started with this heterogeneity early on, and this is going to continue. And just so you know, PASC17 today is what used to be PASC plus one cabinet that we added a year ago, and the 28 cabinets of hybrid multi-core, where now here the host is a Haswell processor, no longer Sandy Bridge, and the GPU is a Pascal processor, no longer Kepler, that replaced Kepler. What we didn't know a year ago is how big this is going to be. At the time we were planning 24 cabinets, and then there was more demand on some of our institutional customers for GPU side, so we added in the end 2 cabinets, and then there was also more demand because of the success of Pascal in the machine learning side. There was more demand on the machine learning side, so this is all new things, so that's why we ended up going back to the 28 cabinets, and this is what we have today. Okay, so the other and I don't know if there are any questions related to systems, or most of you are very familiar with the systems, and despite all the news around this being now one of the top systems, open systems on the planet, I think from a point of view of CSCS users, the number of nodes didn't really change, they just became more powerful. And the architecture didn't fundamentally change. It just is a more powerful machine now. So I hope it was not really a disruption, but more just a step towards more powerful systems. Now, the big thing that happened in starting last fall, and this is something we've been working on for many years, or preparing for many years, is that PASC17 is a host in the PRAISE Tier 0 allocation framework. So PRAISE is this partnership for advanced computing in Europe, and it makes sense. PASC17 is, since 2013, one of the leading systems in Europe, or the leading system in Europe, and so it is also by implication now, because it's part of PRAISE, the leading system in PRAISE. Now, our goal was to shift the Swiss Chronos allocation, so the large allocations of our user program, into this PRAISE Tier 0 portfolio. And the benefits of this is that these large allocations receive more visibility, and the amount of work we have to do to review large allocations is too big for CSCS to do this alone. So it makes a lot of sense from an economy of scale point of view to make this part of a larger European program. And of course, the big advantage, I would say, to the scientists in Switzerland, but scientists, we don't really distinguish between Swiss and European or international scientists. Scientists are scientists, and what matters in Switzerland is the quality of the science has to be top, and then and that's what we are looking for. But for scientists, particularly the Swiss scientists, because not all countries have this view like Switzerland, but particularly for Swiss scientists now, they can act as PIs on European systems. So that means systems that have a different architectures than PASC17 are part of these pools, and you can apply SPIs into the PRAISE Tier 0 calls for those systems. Now for us, a non-negotiable requirement was, and this is why it took so long to prepare this, was that the PRAISE Tier 0 review process really had to meet our quality requirements. And I'm very frank, I know that there is some critical views in the audience here about PRAISE. Originally, when PRAISE was first put in place 10 years ago, it was actually, it met very high quality requirements. And then in recent years, there were problems. And then you can either criticize the thing or you can try to make a positive change to the thing. And this is, I think, was what we were trying to do. And so I will come back to this. I think the review process really in PRAISE is of top quality, and I think we can safely say it was good that we joined this. Or I think it's a benefit to Switzerland that we joined this and to our program. Another thing that was worked out in this is there are certain countries like Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and Switzerland who contribute the large Tier 0 systems. And then the other partners in PRAISE are actually contributing funds to pay for people at these sites who do what we call high-level support, so Tier Level 2 and Level 3 support. So these people that we are hiring will be there to support application scientists and application teams in projects that are roughly 3 to 6 months long. And this is supposed to be a type of support, application support, that is shorter projects compared to what we call Level 4 support that we are providing with the PASC development teams. So they are more PASC development teams. They are looking to the future, and the PRAISE high-level support teams, they are looking to the here and now. Okay, that I think how you can distinguish this. And now the result of this, of course, we had to take some risk. Whenever you do something new, you take a risk. And the result is the Call 14 of PRAISE was published in last November, and this has been allocated between April and March, April 17, so this spring, to next spring. And this really meets expectations, and I would like to acknowledge 3 people. So Petros Koumoutsakos led the Access Committee, and he really did a superhuman effort. And there's people like George Pires also, that are outsiders that really acknowledge that and that you can ask. And we also had extremely good support from Eric Lindahl, who is the head of the Scientific Steering Committee. And I would also like to acknowledge Maria Grazia, who has been running the Swiss program and who also did an extremely very, very important job in the PRAISE board of directors to make sure that this process, which was very difficult because we were doing something new in a European institution, and it's always complicated when you have many partners, but we really managed to meet these expectations. And to summarize, we had 4 Tier 0 projects, 2 of which were Swiss in quotes because the PIs were Swiss. But as I said, there is no Swiss science. There is science and Swiss participation in it that were fully allocated on Piet Steint. And 3 were considered to be scientifically sound and fit, but they were reduced in their allocation, so they were too small to fit Tier 0. I will come back to this. But then we allocated them as what is called candidate Tier 0 projects, but they are really Tier 1 projects. But the advantage they get compared to the normal Tier 1 projects that we allocate in Switzerland, they now get additional high-level support teams allocated to them to help, further scale up the job. So I think this is really a new type of project that we are getting, and that's a good opportunity. And then we had two Tier 0 projects with Swiss PIs allocated, I think, if I'm right, one in Cineca and one in Germany. Okay. So and I think that would not have happened, without us being in the Tier 0. So the one in Germany is a much larger version of Dint multicore. We can only allocate large GPU-accelerated projects. So large multicore projects, they have to go on Hazelhen, and large Xeon Phi projects, they have to go on Marconi, which is the system at Cineca. And this way, really in Europe, I would say we now have a very strong portfolio of machines, and I argue a good situation. So are there any comments or questions about this praise thing? I have one more slide that I would like to discuss, which is go a bit deeper into the different the allocation types that we have. Any comments? I hear a lot of comments of people being upset about the Swiss system joining praise, and well, you cannot be upset. You're a vendor.
I just had a quick question.
Go ahead.
Do you intend to highlight some of the higher priority projects that are ongoing at the moment?
No, I'm not talking about what is going on the system.
You will not?
No.
Okay.
This is really a dialogue with the users to discuss, what the grievances are, and so that everybody understands how to use what the processes are to get on the machine.
Okay.
Okay, so then I will go to the next slide and now dive a bit or discuss a bit more this praise Tier 0 versus the HPCN or CSCS Tier 1 in a nutshell. And probably I should have put quote on both. Okay, so the idea is the praise Tier 0 is replacing the Kronos allocations that we had before, and they are allocations that are larger than 1 million node hours. So a node on PASC17 has 12-core host and 56-core GPU core in terms of streaming multiprocessors on the GPU. So we say it's a 68-core node. And so in the old language of core hours, this would be 68 million core hours. So comparable to the Insight allocations in the US. And so 68 million and up. But I would prefer that we discuss from here on node hours. Okay. And as I said, all European systems, Tier 0 systems, are available for Swiss PIs as well under this. Then the Tier 1 in CSCS and HPCN, so there is Tier 1 in other countries as well, and they run under their national rules. So the Tier 1 at CSCS and HPCN is you would say the Swiss Tier 1 systems. They are meant for systems for allocations that are less than 1 million node hours. And the review process of both, the review process we run here and the review process in praise, they are very similar. So they have very similar in quality. The technical reviews are very similar. You're expected to have preparatory project and get prepared whether you submit for a tier 0 and a tier 1. And then there is a scientific review in both cases, and then there is a panel that looks at the output or the assessments of the technical review and the scientific review. And the panel then makes the recommendation, both within PRAISE and with CSCS. And so what I really would like to stress here, tier 1 is not a replacement for the PRAISE tier 0 calls. And the rigor should be the same on both. It should not be one is easier than the other, okay? But there is, of course, a qualitative advantage if you submit a tier 0 project. And, so I'm talking about large allocations. I'm not talking about small allocations. Small allocations you should not consider PRAISE. But I'm talking about those who have submitted large allocations in the past and are not sure whether they should go with PRAISE or they should go with our own program. And I think the advantage of large allocations going to PRAISE is first you have more space to explain your project. And but there is another advantage, and that is because this is this question: what happens if a large allocation gets reduced by the access committee of PRAISE? So both panels, whether it's the PRAISE Access Committee or our own panel, may recommend to reduce an allocation based on the review and based on discussions with also feedback from the PIs. And then we will, in the case of if the allocation is reduced and falls under this 1 million threshold, then it is no longer a PRAISE tier 0 allocation. And from that point of view would be a reason for rejection. But the way we handle this at CSCS is the PRAISE panel is happening at some date first, and then the CSCS panel, HPCN panel, will be within a week. Last time it was just the following days, but it will be within a week. So time-wise, they are synchronized. And then we take the PRAISE recommendations, and then they get assessed in the context of all the tier 1s that we have in Switzerland. And then the CSCS panel is then, has all the reviews, they are all the same quality, and then they compare everything. So then basically the PRAISE gets assessed the second time, and that's how it can become a candidate tier 0 project and receive high-level support team. I think that's the best you can get, because you not just get time on the machine, but you actually get also support from people that PRAISE is paying. And the other one would be if it's scientifically sound and the CSCS panel thinks it's worth of an allocation, it will be considered under the HPCN allocation, just as any other project. So, the final statement is, the chances for large projects to receive an allocation on PIT-Stein are improved if you submit to the PRAISE project, I would say. I think your odds, you have many more possibilities to get a good service. And this is what I had to say. So that's everything. And again, I'm here really to answer questions. And I'm also going to be around, so you can also ask me personally. I'm here through the very end of the conference. And of course, you can always call me up or discuss things with me. But
so did you choose to complain with Thomas rather than me?
okay, so there is your Gutter in the back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Actually, I recognize some of the faces, but because of the light, it's very hard to see people.
So what about people who need large allocations but don't have single projects? So if you want to do real science with a lot of computations, but you don't have one single project where you can say, I want to do this and this and this job, and only this and this job, and because that's what has to be done for praise or for the tier 0 allocations. I mean, it has to be, the science has been approved by the Swiss National Science Foundation, so it's sound science, but I cannot say I will run exactly these 5 jobs. And that's what is required from your allocation.
Well, I'm not sure if this is true that this is a requirement for
It is.
5 jobs.
No, not 5. I mean, we have to say exactly what jobs are we running, how big they are, and how many for the next 3 years, or for the next year at least. And this is not how we do science.
So
it also goes with what Joost said yesterday about it has to be science and nature science.
Good. So let me explain the Swiss National Science Foundation versus allocation on a large computing system. When the Swiss National Science Foundation reviews projects, and we had discussions with them in the past, they review the science, but they don't review the computational approach and all the technical aspects of the computation. And this is why, very similar to large experiments, when you do you want beam time at the synchrotron, you have to apply to the synchrotron to get beam time. And I think you have two possibilities here. One is you write allocation requests for pieces of your project, for different, say your National Science Foundation project has several postdocs or students, because you have broken it down. And then you can, for the different parts, just like you write allocations for beam time at the synchrotron, do these different allocations. When you write...
I'm sorry, I just want to say there is one problem with this, and this is your half-year lag time. If I hire a postdoc, and then only then I can submit the project, I have to wait half a year, and the postdoc is more or less
so
waiting
this,
half a year
this
to
is
get the
good
time.
feedback that we need to think about. So that's a good suggestion that I'm happy. So I think we should take up is whether there is a way to have a tier 1 allocation with a shorter cadence. We have to look into this, whether this is possible, and I'm happy to have that. So I will take you on this, so I will get back with you and discuss with you how we can do this. So that definitely something we need to look at. But it would always mean we have 2 types of tier 1 at that point. But let's think about this. The other thing is, I'm not sure it's true. When I look at the large allocation, the things that Praise has done, I don't think it's a correct statement that you say you do 5 or you do just a few big runs. That's not the way they did it. So we have one large allocation. I think they are public, so I can talk about them.
Yes.
So one of them is a large one is actually for the Marvel community that went to EPFL, and that is, almost more throughput type of calculations in order to provide data for these material design things that you heard yesterday in the public lecture of Nicola Mazzari. So it is not correct that this is just to do a few hero runs. The PRACE Tier 0 allocation is really centered around science, and people, the allocation committee are, serious scientists. The access committee there, like any serious scientist who is sitting in there, and they are not computer geeks, definitely not. So I think that's an improper characterization of the PRACE Tier 0.
It was a characterization also of the CSCS allocation, the big allocations and the trace.
Yes, Simone.
Thank you. A completely different question is about the PASC projects. So in the PASC projects that finishes now, there were several calls within this period. Now for the coming PASC period, are there different calls that will be called in these 3 years, or is there only one?
No, there was one call that, so we have I think it's around 10 projects that will now run, start I think around now or in July, and that will then run for several years. And compared to the past, I think in PASC we had a certain fraction of the PASC projects were really doing library and tools development and for things going on at extreme scale, so pushing the limits. And there was actually a rather large number of projects that were, and they were also in the review that we had a bit criticized for being more, not so looking into the future or not so doing things at extreme scale. And I think that type of work that in the past was funded under PASC is work that can go into the high level, is work that can be supported better by these high-level support teams from PRACE. So you should really look at this as a way to, to help. The high-level support teams are really there to help the here and now to help these applications on these, whether it's KNL in Italy or the GPU accelerated here in Switzerland, these more challenging architectures.
But for accessing this course that now is closed, for new people coming, new groups forming, there will be none until 2020?
We have no funding right now for, to have more calls. And this is something, we get told by our president at ETH, but I'm sure you get told also by your rectors or presidents that the budgets for science, they are not going to grow. They are more under pressure in the coming years, but still we're in a much better position, I would say. So we should not complain compared to other countries.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a question
Thomas.
Regarding the.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, regarding the previous comment regarding the selection process for projects in general, whether it's P-Race or another one, doesn't matter. It's true that I think all of our projects that we submit to you have already been assessed from the scientific, say, worthiness, whether it's from the Swiss National Science Foundation or through European funding bodies and so on and so forth. So we find ourselves sometimes in the little bit awkward situation where we have to go again through a scientific review when asking for CPU time on machines. I think I understand very well the philosophy that you have, and I respect that very highly, that you want to do good science, and that should be our primary objective. And that's normal that, you know, some scientific assessment is in the game. But I would plead that the technical assessment is somehow has more weight than, again, another scientific assessment, because, you know, you might fall on a competitor, a reviewer who has, you know, would make bad comments on your proposal, and then you have fundings to fund the PhD students or postdocs, and then you don't have the CPU time. So would be a very unfortunate situation. So my suggestion or proposal would be that CSCS gives more emphasis, say, on the technical aspect. Is really the code well running on this infrastructure?
Okay. So again, I would like to reiterate, and if things are not like that, then I need to know. When a project is written and scientifically successful at SNF, and you have the same science, you know, written in a proposal for an allocation, and you even have a way to write that you have SNF funding, that is taken into account. And I think it would really be, it's not our desire to review the science again. Our reviewers are instructed to take this, and also the praise reviewers, to take this into account. And you could probably say that the only way to improve on this, so the science is not reviewed twice, okay? The science is, has to be there, has to be understandable, you know, in the review for resources, and then you, and so you should do well in both, okay? I know sometimes it can happen, and then we need to basically have a discussion to see what happens, because this is not the intent of our review to review the science again. Okay, but let me stress one point very clearly. When you receive a large allocation here, 1 million node hours, that is 1 million Swiss francs that you get for a year, okay? And I don't know if your average NSF proposal is 1 million Swiss francs per year that you have, okay? Just think about that. This 1 million Swiss franc is paid by the ETH domain, by ETH for everybody, because we have a mandate to do infrastructures, okay? So it cannot be that, you know, SNF, who is on the record of saying there was a review, not a review, there was a workshop on June 12th, and it's very nice on YouTube. You can, if you have time for a day, to watch the whole thing. There was an SNF representative on this European panel, and she basically said they don't fund infrastructure and they don't really care about infrastructure, okay? That's what she said, and she could also make some very easy statements about data, because she didn't have to worry about infrastructure. And if you have an organization with that view of science, you have to have a different quality control at the infrastructure level. It would not be responsible if I just take SNF and say everything is good. I think we would be, we would not be responsible towards the taxpayers who pay SNF and pay the ETH domain. So we have to take our responsibility, and I hope you understand this.
I fully understood, yeah, but it's more that you would assess more the technical aspect. So
the technical aspect.
My suggestion was not to put science under the rug, not at all. But to make it more. I mean, your responsibility is to make good use of the resources.
Yes, and I think that this is the main goal. So the technical review has a very high Well, both the technical review and, of course, the science, but the technical review is really the main contribution, of course, that is coming from us. But and we can discuss this. I do not want the technical review to be a filter. Okay, I want a panel of peers, and the peers are openly known, you know, and to assess the scientific review and the technical review, and to allow us to do things like this high-level support team, because sometimes a project is desirable, even though technically it has certain difficulties, but we can fix them with a high-level support team or with support from CSCS. That's why one thing that we really don't do like other places, the center, the technical staff at the center cannot prevent a proposal from being admitted just because they write a bad technical review. And we have very strict rules on how we do the technical review inside of CSCS. But I very much appreciate this criticism, and I think I'm taking away that I think we are, and we need constant input to improve the process and support the support the science.
In very practical terms, this means we are advised to mention that our science was already approved by XYZ bodies.
But
okay, which was probably something we didn't do.
Yeah, well, and many proposals actually do. And one other thing, you know, Laurent, Jörg, you are probably every now and then you're on the Forschungsrat. And maybe in the Forschungsrat you can also try to give some input there that they need to at least appreciate that in computational science, infrastructure is as important as in experimental science. And if I say this, then they may say, well, that's, you know, they may not take it seriously, but if you sit on the Forschungsrat, maybe you can have some influence there. But look at the view of SNF, and I know I'm on the record, and I know that maybe they view this, but they need to get this message with the trends that we have in Europe, with the European Open Science Cloud and the European data infrastructure. And we are very well positioned in in Switzerland with what we are doing in the ETH domain. But I would appreciate if SNF took a bit more notice about this. And you can help.